Hello everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the Tales of Hybris podcast. Today, we are actually gonna talk about the music in the game, as well as the game.
Yes, finally. We are going to encounter our first two leitmotifs, as well as the first two tracks, which were not composed but Uematsu in basically any Final Fantasy game ever.
As far as we are informed.
Yes.
So, let's dive into the first scene. After the great intro. Hype! Yes! Really somber piano music.
Yes, very, very melancholic feeling. Also a lot of like reminiscing in a way. Nostalgic even, maybe. Somewhat.
Yeah, definitely has that kind of feel.
Which makes a lot of sense at the point where it comes in within the story. But for now it's just this cold open.
So we have this group of people, such a really melancholic, somber scene, and now this character goes off to the side to look into this mixture of like post-apocalyptic, kind of futuristic, but also kind of like medieval destroyed city.
Yeah, I mean it has the feeling of like this a civilization lost to time in a way.
Yeah.
It looks like it has been something very big and grand and even modern in a way, but it's just lost to time, to arguably a lot of time.
And now one of the favorite lines of dialogue.
Some more deep breaths. Let it sink in.
We shouldn't make fun of this scene.
It's fine.
Listen to my story. This may be our last chance.
It's like really strong emotion here already.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, this like especially with the part where the first lines are "Listen to my story. This may be the last chance." Already very strongly underlines this feeling of okay, there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of things that have already happened, which, of course, then as you find out throughout the game, is a very important theme within the plot of the game. Things that have happened before and some would still influence, or maybe have not happened, however you want to view it, I guess. But still influence the past, the now being influenced by the past and cyclical natures and all that.
Yeah.
It happens a lot with things with this game, and that's also why I find it very fitting that they started with this cold open that just throws you in, and only basically this short intro scene before you're shipped up to some.
Let's not talk about the next scene yet.
Yeah, but you're fully somewhere else already in like a few minutes from that on, and so
yeah,
I really like that this cyclical thing in a way is also underlined by this. This is like, okay, we're already at a point, and we're gonna now go full circle until we might come back to this point where we started the whole story, and then continue from then afterwards.
Yeah, good point.
But I also kind of like just the fact that it was never fully sure that they were gonna pick that song. Like that song wasn't written for the intro scene. They experimented with quite a few different songs. I think at some point I read that Suteki Dane was like planned to be like the title track for Final Fantasy and also come up in the first scene at some point, but that's one of those.
Kind of see that as well.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I'm also, that's something I don't want to like state necessarily as a fact, because I read it in some of those liner notes, and I'm always very unsure about the liner notes.
So let's not put you on Wikipedia with this now.
Maybe not. But yeah, but the fact that I'm pretty sure about is that the whole thing of them trying to fit different songs, and
Yeah.
basically they had the sequence already, and then they looked for music that fitted, and then after they found that track, the Zanarkand track, then they just recut the scene a little to fit with the musical beats. But it was basically something that happened a lot throughout the whole process of like often not having the normal route or the route that you maybe have in mind, where it's like usually I guess you would guess that there's going to be the scene and then it's given to the composer and then they're going to look at the scene, write for the scene, and often it's more like we'll just have I already wrote music. There's like 6 pieces. There you go. Fit
Put
them in
somewhere.
there. At least see if it works. I don't know. Because I had all those ideas. Maybe you can fit them into or the best, and I'm sure both things happened. But as far as I read about it, that's I have it here. Yeah, the sound staff, Uematsu included, only started playtesting the game in the latter half of development, and that's often the point where they found out for the first time how the designers actually used the tracks that they wrote. Often it was like, yep, I have this finished because you said you needed the battle theme or whatever, and then I don't know what they're going to do with it. It's like in 1.5 years, something like that, I'm going to find out. Let's see.
This must be such a weird thing to like basically, I mean, if you're a composer, whatever you write is kind of your baby at the moment, and you're giving it away, and then like 1.5 years later, it's like, yeah, it's there, and like, oh yeah, right, I forgot I did that.
Yeah, something like that. It has his very own production stack, especially with like a production that as huge as the 10 was for the time back then.
Definitely.
Because, things are just way more split up, and I think the voice acting came in very early, and they even rewrote some of the, especially the characters of Tidus and Yuna, they somewhat rewrote around their voice actors because they were just like, okay, the speaking is going to be so important that it makes sense to try to fit the in-game characters more to how the voice actors actually are.
Yeah.
To have like as little disconnect between those two parts as possible. And then a lot of stuff, of course, followed around that, because that might even change the music that the theme has to look like for the character. Like,
Definitely.
I don't know, maybe Tidus' theme had already had a draft which was very different, and then they came up with but now it's going to be like that. And it's okay. Back to the drawing board.
That would explain the intro.
Makes sense.
But the voice acting, I mean, I don't want to go in depth with the voice acting here, but just a little thing that was interesting to me about the voice acting was that the movement, like they put a lot of effort into the movement of the faces when they developed it in the beginning. Especially, I think you can see it even more in the original than in the remake, because the character model, especially for Tidus and Yuna, are quite different in the remake. And they had so much like facial expression and movement of the cheeks and everything that it was really hard to make that work with English. Because I mean, English audiences probably not used to having something dubbed.
Yeah.
So whenever something's dubbed in English, they try to match the lip flaps as much as possible. And for this, there's an interesting note by the translator. He said he had to fit in because like English is way more verbose than Japanese is, because in Japanese you sometimes just say one word and that's a sentence. In English you always have to have like a verb and a subject, and everything is like longer. So the transcriber, or like the translator, said something like it was like writing a whole script in haiku form to make it work.
Awesome.
Which is such an
Fun
interesting thing. Yeah, it must have been fun, because like matching something like an I or an N sound, you can really see an N sound. And they tried to match the dialogue, even if there is something that would translate better and would make more sense in the way it is spoken. They sometimes translated it to like fit better to what the movement of the mouth of the character is. I mean, I think that's enough about voice acting. That was another tangent already, but that was just something I really found really interesting.
Yeah, definitely is.
So a few notes I have there about like the difference between the remake and the original is not a lot here. I just feel that the remake is actually a real piano performance, and I don't think the original is. I think the original was just programmed, and the remake might be a programmed one as well. But there's a few things. Let's see. Let me pull up Cubase. And let's go back to the first track. So there's a few little minor details in there that I've marked green here that sounded like a real piano to me. So first of all, like pedal movements. Listen really closely here. This sound a little bit. If it is right here, right before it starts again, you can hear this little that kind of sounds, which when you play piano, there is a pedal on the board, which when you press it down, the notes are gonna be sustained. I mean, I don't have to look at you, you know that. But this is a sustain pedal, and if you release this sustain pedal on a real piano, you have this kind of a little bit of a distortion sound, I'd say, because there is, I think, felt that holds it and makes it like sustain.
And then they are lifted up.
Exactly, and when they're lifted up, there's a little bit of distortion on the actual piano string. So I think this is what you hear here, as well as at the very beginning, I think there's something like a chair moving. Very end, I'm sorry. My chair. I think there was a little bit of a noise that sounded like a piano chair. Nope, can't find it now.
I only hear the same.
Yep,
that's there again.
That's definitely there. So this is what makes me feel like this was a real performance. But then again, it's really close in tempo to the original, like really, really close.
Yeah.
So that would, I mean, he could have played it to a click or something. But then it wouldn't be as expressive, I guess. But
yeah, but I'd wager that one's a real performance. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so too. But like VSTs have gone really into detail with all these things. So there is piano VSTs, like virtual instruments. That also simulate this kind of pedal movement to let go of the pedal.
Yeah.
They also have that in there somewhere as well. So
I mean, since it would be interesting to see, like, because you said there was a similar. I mean, there's a possibility since it's piano only. Even the like original one could be a real performance, because that would have been very possible even for like the technical limitations back then. Because basically you have to have one synthesizer that can do the piano sound.
True, that would have been possible. I think so, yeah, because like PS2 era is like, you could import like real MP3s in there already.
Yeah.
So most likely, that's a good point. It could have been a real player back then as well. But then again, I think it feels a bit too gridded for that. If we listen to the original,
good piano players that can be,
but as great, I mean,
precise.
They can be, but do they want to be? I mean, listen.
I see what you mean. It has a very much on-grid feeling. And
especially with the hits. It doesn't feel like somebody who puts in expression. It's all like the middle expression.
It's true.
And I don't think a piano player would do that.
Can you directly switch to the other one?
Yes. So that's the original. You can see it here. And that's a remake.
Yeah, there's more rubato in it, definitely.
Yes. So rubato being time stretching a little bit.
Yes. Okay.
So if we go back to...
A little faster, a little slower.
Especially listen to something like this here.
There's as well.
Like this part.
Although there one happens. There's actually a little rubato with the
I think the rubato is in there, but I'm talking about like the strength.
But I see what you mean.
Especially with the last note, because it's dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it just has a more organic feeling in the remake.
So I do feel it's different, and I think this does speak for this being like for the remake being a real player and the original being a MIDI performance.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been a doctored MIDI performance. There's a million different possibilities, but I still think the original was programmed and the new one was played by a real player.
Would make sense as well.
Yes.
It would fit within the vibe of how most of the things got remastered, which is in most cases I think just less synths and more real orchestras, or really sounding at least like real instruments. I'm actually not sure on how much actually was recorded live and how much is programmed.
I think most of it is programmed, but I don't know. We should, again, fact check stuff like this. Good thing we did that beforehand. Anyways, Do I have anything to add here?
But yeah, I mean, it's,
I had a note saying I don't want to go into detail with the music here yet. All right, never mind that. But I mean, the scene, we've kind of spoiled that already. It's like a cyclical thing. It comes back. So this is not the one and only time this scene comes up. This is basically a foreshadowing thing, as you probably can think, like, which is kind of obvious when you see the next scene.
yeah.
That this is foreshadowing. So I don't think this is a spoiler.
Not really.
And I think it's a really interesting way to start off a game as well. Because this is more like something that came from theater pieces. That you have like the ending of the piece already or not. I'm not going to say this is the ending or not. But like something like the ending already at the beginning of the theater piece. So the audience wants to know how they got there. Or even if you think about like some stupid sitcom.
I mean,
Well,
yeah.
now I'm here. I'm sure you want to know how I got here.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just like cold opens, yeah, it's become even more common ground, I think, nowadays with like TV. If you're talking about TV shows like Breaking Bad and all that stuff, that goes in more artsy direction, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That so they use different narrative structures, and yeah, that's just one of them. Like I think cold open, okay, yeah, even before, or here it's like basically in that case you would say the intro and the cold open are like interwoven. Like the intro is the cold open, which would usually be like the title card for the game. In that case, it's just that cold open shown in there. So
yeah, and I think choosing like a melancholic scene for this is a really interesting choice.
I mean,
because if you think back to Final Fantasy VIII, which had this scene of two of like the more main-ish characters fighting, there was this like more energetic kind of fighting scene already at the beginning.
Definitely.
Or Final Fantasy VII, if you think back to Final Fantasy VII, it starts off with like this infiltration mission.
Yes.
It's not really like a cold open or anything, but the first scene you see is something really full of action and everything.
Yeah.
And here, it takes a completely different approach. There's no action or anything. There is nothing that shows like the main character is a badass that's gonna rip everybody's heads off or something. It's just like this, you just want to know how they got there. This really somber scene, everybody's sitting together, everybody's sad, you don't know why, you want to know why.
Yeah,
So
I
I
agree.
think-
I think it's very effective, and it's it's very perfectly underscored by the piece Zanarkand.
Yes.
It just really fits very well. It was very, very well chosen, I would say. Also, I mean, in that case, I'm just going to bring it up here because you can hear it so easily in that one because it literally is simply piano. But a lot of Uematsu's compositions have this, since he comes from being a piano player, you often hear in the compositions how things are like, feel divided in this left hand, right hand thing. There's like this, there's this clear pattern that a left hand could play going on in some instrument, and then there's like the melody part on the right hand with some chords in there. And I mean, in that case, of course, it's literally what's happening. It's like the left hand has the arpeggios and the right hand is doing the melodies over it, but it's like a kind of thought process or an approach to composition that I feel like, and I know at least some people on the internet agree, that you can hear in Uematsu's compositions very often. Like this clear distinction of, this is accompaniment, this is my main melody.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And you could easily translate this to a piano, however it's orchestrated in the end.
Yeah, I think that really is a good explanation of his style. Because even if you think away from the piano, I think what you wanted to say basically is that if you strip down his compositions to what they kind of bare bones are, you could arrange them on a piano like left hand plays harmony and chords and like movement of chords, and right hand plays melody.
Yeah.
And I mean also like Aerith's theme is played on the piano as well, which is also a really good one of these. And I think a lot of his tracks you can just really strip down to piano and it still sounds really good, as a lot of like the Piano Collection soundtracks show.
True.
So that's a really good example of
They
this.
made a whole CD about it, so yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Piano Collection soundtracks from Final Fantasy games, and I really, really enjoyed those. And also, a little tidbit, Zanarkand was one of the pieces that made me want to learn how to play the piano. I mean, I'm mainly a guitar player, but still, this was one of the pieces, one of the two Final Fantasy pieces that made me want to learn the piano. I mean, I still can't play it. But it was always one of the reasons where like, I really want to know how to play this instrument because it is so beautiful. Because it really is. Alright, and now to the transition from this really melancholic storytelling. Or do you have anything to add here still? I think we got that covered.
No, especially since we're coming back to that point anyhow later in the game.
Sure.
Like, no.
All right, so I'm a sucker for transitions, especially like not just in storytelling, especially also in music. Especially I like prog rock and prog metal music, and especially in that kind of genre, sometimes they have a part, then there is some really cheesy break, and then there's another part, and I hate that. And I'm kind of the same when it comes to stories. If there is a transition, and even if it is like a hard cut transition, there must be a good reason or a good way to do this. And here we have a really good example of how to do a really hard cut from one scene to the next. Because this is a really extreme cut, but it doesn't feel completely out of place. It's just something that makes you curious and want to know what's happening. So in this really melancholic storytelling kind of vibe that you got from To Zanarkand, this very first scene here, you don't know what's coming, and then the next thing you hear are like beautiful waves. Let's go back to our cutscenes here. And then first you hear some beautiful waves, and well, let's just start the scene, I guess. See? And then this comes up. I'd say let's just watch a bit of the scene.
Yeah.
It's like really modern city, upbeat vibe. A bit of mystery right here again, because there's a reason the camera pans here. Remember that guy? And now, we know that guy. We've seen that one before. So here, we have...
Easily recognize his legs.
Yes.
Having the weird trousers.
I mean, yes, he was a plumber after all.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah. We see this guy. There's some kids that want autographs from him. And also some girls
Yes.
that are the next ones. So he seems to be kind of a celebrity here.
Yes, very much so.
Here he goes over to the girls. They also want that sign with the really interesting voice actors.
Yeah.
And now you get a little bit of insight into the character of Tidus.
Nah, he's a bit of a poser.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on where you come from, how charming he is.
I mean,
some
yeah.
people find him quite charming. I can find him a bit annoying.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Alright, so...
And he's also fucking 17 years old.
Yeah. So I think this transition from the scene, from the really somber, melancholic stuff to this really like upbeat, happy kind of star player vibes, that's such an interesting transition.
That's true. It's a very stark contrast.
Yes.
Honestly, which seems very much on point, and it seems very, very deliberate
Of course.
as a choice, because yeah, we're obviously somewhere completely else, because this looks nothing like what we had before, landscape wise or anything.
Yes.
Basically the only thing that stays the same is, as you mentioned, the main character, Tidus. But yeah, everything else is a wholly different vibe to it. So
Indeed.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense that it's this kind of very stark contrast in the music as well. It goes from the somber thing to the club-ish, I don't know, but like
That's a good point.
upbeat techno, not techno's the wrong word.
Electronic.
Yeah,
I mean, there is...
This is maybe more disco, more in the realms of disco at least.
I think that fits quite well, and I do have quite a few notes on this here. Because, as I mentioned before, there is like another contributor to the soundtrack. Let me see what I wrote down is I really love the contrast here. We see a bunch of people waiting for Tidus. We get to know Tidus as like this famous kind of sports dude with the ball. And he's got a lot of fans. We get to know him as a bit of like the flirty sports star that enjoys the attention and that kind of thing. And one thing that's really interesting about this version, it's called the Prelude. And for anybody who has played the older Final Fantasy games or even the newer ones, there is one of the like strongest and most memorable themes in there already, which is that harp theme that's going up. Which is, I mean, it's called the Prelude, and it's been around since like the first Final Fantasy. It's been the menu theme, I think, for Final Fantasy 1, and it's been in every game up until Final Fantasy 10, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it's been, I mean, it's been one of the one of the main compositions of Nobuo Uematsu. So therefore it makes sense to keep this as basically one of the things that ties the Final Fantasy world together. Because like every Final Fantasy has a different kind of storyline. So it's not like you can play Final Fantasy 1, then 2, then 3, and it's connected. There are, of course, things of the world building and stuff that connect the world. But I feel like using the prelude in all these games somewhere is one of those things that connects the world together.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. There's some connection on some level to make, to reinforce that this is maybe not the same thing, but not the same story, but it's in the same realm in a way, more like maybe more thematically than the exact same realm, because I don't think it's ever implied that this is like one big world where all of this happens.
I'm sure there's fans that can connect them, but,
I'm sure
but no, I don't think that's
something like the Zelda timelines. I'm sure exist.
Oh, true. right.
Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I also really like the fact that they used this remixed version of the like very classic theme.
Yes.
Because it also works for me, the thing of like, okay, we're going back to the fantasy thing because apparently everyone wants that, but we're gonna like give it a new direction, a new touch, in a way, with like in that case their Eastern theme and all that, which I'm not sure is what they really wanted to say with this, but it fits.
I mean, I do have a few quotes here about this, and according to the Final Fantasy Wiki, this version of the prelude is meant to make players feel like they are in Zanarkand, whose background music is sharply different from the more ethereal and less city-like feeling of the other parts of the game we are going to meet. And the music director Keiji Kawamori has said, "I remember this arrangement was the result of being inspired by the visualization of the game scenes. A radio DJ appears right after the first scene where this song is played. So in the scene after this, there's a radio DJ talking, over a different theme, we can say it. Next thing is going to be Tidus theme. Tidus theme, sorry. There's the debate of Tidus and Tidus.
Yeah, this is Tidus,
yeah. I'm trying. Short tangent, whatever. We've had so many tangents. Short tangents, everybody who's played or seen anything about Final Fantasy X. There's the debate if you call him Tidus or Tidus, because the most natural way to say it without knowing, because his name is never mentioned in the game. So like if you read it as an English speaking person, it would make sense to call him Tidus. But then again, the Japanese version of his name is Tida.
Okay. And
his voice actor, I'm blanking on his name again. His voice actor. It was during one scene that his voice actor pronounced, it was before his voice actor. His voice actor just clarified this. There was for a trailer for Final Fantasy X, one of the dudes who read the trailer pronounced his name as Tidus, and he was just never corrected. Not because this was the way to pronounce his name, but more they didn't have a strong opinion on this, so yeah, alright, it's Tidus now. And ever since then, also his voice actor pronounced his name as Tidus, so the canon would be to pronounce it as Tidus. So at least I'm trying, and I think you're trying to pronounce it as Tidus, so keep with that theme, but we're probably most likely gonna name him Tidus every now and then as well. And I completely lost track of what I wanted to say. Oh yeah, right. The radio DJ appears in the next scene, so you have this, as you said, that's more electronic kind of DJ radio thing going on here, which was really a deliberate choice, which I really think was a good choice as well. And this also makes perfect sense, since the whole thing is basically a remix anyways. Yeah. It's a remix of the original one. And the interesting thing about this is that even Uematsu is kind of, even on Spotify, Uematsu is credited as the composer for this. He did the original prelude theme, but there was actually Shirosato Noda being the one to write this version. He was the one who used to be the synth operator on quite a few other games, and he was not the synth operator on this one. He was on Front Mission 3 as well as Vagrant Story, which was a really cool game as well. And this time there's been other synth operators, but he contributed this remix of the prelude. So this was actually not done by Uematsu apparently, but by somebody who was actually just a synth programmer. So he wasn't even really a composer, he was usually just a synth programmer, and he just contributed this remix of, actually calling it a remix is the perfect thing to say here, I think, because it's a remix of the original prelude theme. And it really does have a cool futuristic kind of vibe. So as you said before, that's a really good way to connect this fantasy setting with a new and futuristic one. Because like if you take a look around the city here, it's all futuristic. It's all like lit up and everything seems exciting, and like they're up at night, everything's lit up brightly. And then you have the harp prelude theme thingy going, which is really like one of the most Final Fantasy things you can have. So I really like how they connected these two things together here.
Yeah. I also think that's very fitting how the connection exists between, because the original one being like this plucked harp melody arpeggio thing, it has a very, especially in its original use without the underlying drums here, it has a very mystical, ethereal feeling, I would say.
It does.
And if I like it how it's combined here with this like very grounded, very basic rudimentary beat that's under it, which personally works. Like the flirting, fine.
Yeah.
But I also like how that fits, and now it makes even more sense to me when you said that after seeing the in-game scenes, that track was created. Because also like Zanarkand, the city itself that we're in right now, has for me the same mixture of like the futuristic thing that you mentioned, but also there's like, I think there's, I was never sure if it is actually that, but it looks to me like there's water in the air.
Oh
and
yes.
Like everything's not really built on solid ground.
You
More
never
feels like
you never see the ground.
Yeah, it's just like this floating huge city with very unnatural or supernatural things happening and going on, and it's like, that's just normal. You also have this giant sphere of water in the middle, and people can breathe underwater and whatever.
There's an explanation for this.
Okay, true.
There is an explanation for the breathing underwater thing. We're going to see like one of the next scenes. We're going to see this.
True, it is there. But yeah, I love how that mix also feels like it's very much in the music as well. I was like, okay, we have this ethereal old theme that's even basically that's dating back through games, and have this very radio perfectly fits the sound for me. Like make really radio version of that one for me. Thank you. Okay, there we go.
Yep, I really like the bass line in this one as well.
Yeah,
it's so fun. It's such a fun remix. Yeah. And it just, also as I said, there is nothing of nature to be seen in anywhere around this city.
Yeah.
Nothing that seems like nature. You see like these arcs of water all around the place, really like interesting building structures and everything. But yeah, there's nothing that seems like, that looks like a plant. There's nothing that looks like anything else but a human or like a highway or something. Yeah. So everything's really futuristic, and we have quite the cool contrast there. And a few little things I want to note about like the original versus the remade version. It's pretty similar. There's not a lot of differences going on there. I just thought that I do prefer the original version here. Because let's play the original version again real quick. Just a little bit here.
It's also like the bass line.
Yeah. Also the sounds. The kick and snare sounds. And like the left and right hi-hat thingy. And now we got the prelude in there. First. And it is also played on harp. And if we switch over to the remake version, listen to the drums here.
Yeah, it feels like a weird doubling down on the 80s vibe that it has. Like the snare is like the 80s snare. They're just gated to hell. And
yes. So to me, it has quite a different vibe. I do enjoy the original more there, especially since it's kind of supposed to be an old school remix in a way. And let's just wait for the toms real quick, which should be around here.
Oh no, that's the other chords, right? I like those.
Alright, the chord change is quite cool. And now? I mean, it's also kind of cool, but I still prefer the original. I mean, if we go to the tom fill again.
Yeah. I don't know, to me, but that's something that's gonna pop up for me at least throughout the soundtrack, especially when comparing the two ones, is that sometimes for me the original ones just somewhat sound cleaner in some points.
That's so interesting.
Clearer to hear sometimes, which often is also a thing. Like often has a strong connection with just that. Often the different instrument levels, volume-wise, feel like very much more on the same level in the original one. Often, like most of the things are like roughly here, and the remixes have broader dynamics within the instruments. I feel
yes.
Like, things are way more quieter in the background, other things are way more in the foreground, and the original one is just like, everything's somewhere here in the middle.
I agree. But I think that's still an interesting point to bring up, because a lot of times I don't really agree with that. I mean, yes, it's more level than the original, but since it's spaced out different and the sounds are more modern, to me it does sound clearer a lot of times. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, we'll talk about this, especially I think with like the battle theme.
Yeah.
We talked about this a bit like off camera.
But yeah. I mean, it also might have. I wanted to put that disclaimer in the front, basically, that it might just have to do with me having listened to the original soundtrack by now way more than the remade one.
Yeah.
So the original one just is more ingrained to my ears, so I guess that's when also it just sounds clearer because I've heard it I don't know how many times by now.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to things like the battle theme.
I mean, yeah. that one gives me some weird sort of PTSD by now.
Late game grind.
Yeah.
Alright. But yeah, so much for this track. I didn't think we would have that much to talk about for the first 2 tracks or 3 tracks already.
Either.
2 tracks.
2 tracks by now.
But yeah, anyways, you got a first glimpse of the whole city of Zanarkand right there and what it all looks like. And in the next scene... Hey, did it stop recording?
Huh.
Fuck.
Why though?
I have no idea.
And where though?
Okay.
Not 2 of them are out?
I think let's just do a quick cut here and...
Yeah, maybe.
So now that we got to know the futuristic side of Zanarkand, we are going to move on and see the vast hugeness of Zanarkand with this next scene in the beautiful sundown. And next one is the main theme of the character we get to know, yes. Tidus. So it's Tidus themes. It's sort of kind of melancholic with a string run, with, as you talked about in the beginning, with like a kind of weird climb chord change thingy, which then moves on into a quite beautiful, free-sounding, freedom-loving kind of melancholic vibe as well, with guitars. So let's move on to the next scene. Yes. So we see how big the city is in the beautiful sundown. Water coming out of the buildings.
I mean, this is the remastered one, but even back then when they came out originally, like, those vistas blew my little kid mind. I was like, expect all the cutscenes in Final Fantasy X were like, fuck.
Oh yeah.
What the hell is going on?
Oh yeah. And now
I was in a coffee shop running away from home.
we got
when I heard
this
the news.
DJ we talked about.
Our hero, Jet, gone, vanished into thin air.
And we got
My
this
dad must
really
have been his biggest
beautiful,
fan. I knew how
melancholic
sad he'd be.
guitar vibe there.
Heck, we all were that day. Zanar, I says to myself, what are you thinking? I went running straight back home. We sat up talking about Jet all night.
Fun little thing that he's called
My dad and I never
Zanar,
talked so much.
like Zanarkand.
Whoa. Didn't mean to reminisce, folks.
Alright.
Anyway, 10 years later, the Jet Memorial Cup tournament is today. The 2 teams that have won through to the finals are, of course, the Abes from A East and the Duggles from C South.
So let's go into the scene a little bit. So We got Tidus coming in on this like roadway kind of thing, highway, which is kind of weird since there are like no cars or no railway. But I mean, it looks cool with the scenery and everything, but it's still kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a little bit unclear what the purpose of this giant walkway, I guess.
Yeah, but then again, as we said, there's nothing natural about Zanarkand anyways.
Yes.
So I think like looking for a reason for this to be there is also like not really the most useful thing to do, I guess. So let's go to Tidus' theme. Basically what you said there is quite the difference between the... Oh no, you talked about the visuals, never mind. But also in the soundtrack, there's quite a bit of a difference in the beginning already. So if we listen to the remaster again, which we just heard, it starts off with these quite spacious big clusters of string chords. And then this...
The horn theme.
Which is this really like heroic kind of thing.
Yes, very much.
And then
it just fades into this, like, for me, this, I guess this song always had this campfire vibe.
Yeah.
In a way. Just like,
yeah,
just sitting there. It's a very chill night. And yeah, just very calming in a way.
Totally is. And this also is another like contrast thing, because I feel like if we go back to the beginning once again, these string chords are kind of like a heroic introduction, especially with like the brass now. This is kind of like the introduction of the hero.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Which would be kind of a good thing. And now to actually show the more chill side of Tidus, I think it's kind of a good way to start off with the heroic vibe to show, hey, this is the main character, this is the hero, but he's also like kind of chill.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the feeling I also get, where like before that you see him being like in his star player mode, I guess, with like he's a little cocky, he's a little yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm the greatest. Like, yeah, pretty much I agree with all of you here.
That's what he did.
Yeah, but this, gets to this. I don't know. I find it quite interesting that, in a way, that theme was chosen for him.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes it feels like a contrast to how he's characterized in the game. Sometimes, where it's very eager and no, come on, we have to do this, and we're gonna have to make this, and like, if you do something, then you think about winning, like.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna come up later with Blitzball, but it's like, yeah, if it's just gonna be for to be in it, then no way, why would you even? It's about, getting it done, the thing, especially later in the game, when it's like, yeah, we're gonna get the thing done that nobody ever managed to do. But
we don't know how and why, but we
have no idea what, but we'll find a way. Yeah. And have him have this, like, because even the theme doesn't even, like, change. It stays in this very relaxed mood, somewhat sentimental mood, which I guess makes a lot of sense, especially if we move after the like intro part that we're talking about now, that of course he's very reminiscent, very thinking back about
that's a good
things
word
that he lost back then. So yeah, in that regard, that melancholic feel makes a lot of sense to me. Also then I think it pairs well to a certain degree with Yuna's theme later. Like both have that kind of vibe, more chill, more calming.
But also I feel like this is quite the longing feel. Not just the melancholy touch, but also like longing for something, like missing something that you kind of want to get towards.
No.
I feel like this also works with Tidus' character, because I mean, you don't really know anything about him yet, but just like this longing character of like wanting to, let's just put it like wanting to win this tournament or whatever. Because there is, I mean, that's not really a spoiler, there's a tournament coming up and he's going to play Blitzball, and like this longing for something, longing to get stuff done in a way.
Yeah, I can very much hear that.
But if we change to the original now, even the beginning is quite different, because the beginning sounds... The strings are not as spaced far apart. Like, as far spaced apart, that's not a word. they're not spaced as
They're
are in
not
the
spaced
original.
apart as far.
Yes, thank you. Because like in the remastered version, I feel like they tried to go for more of a real orchestrator would divide these strings up into different parts. So therefore it sounds way more wide than the original did. Let's listen to the original now to see if I'm actually right. Yeah, see?
It's all higher, all the strings are higher up, it's way more center.
Yes. Also, I only just realized that there is a harmony on the brass.
Yeah.
I never realized that. Is that in the remake as well? I don't think it was.
No, yeah,
It's
you're
not.
right.
It's
Yeah,
not.
that's single.
To be honest, I think that's better in the remake.
Yeah, it helps the clarity.
Yeah.
I guess I like the harmonies, but I'm always a sucker for harmonies.
Yeah.
At a very general level, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would agree that. I mean, I can also see that they maybe by going for that more natural feeling, having more room in the mix, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
whereas like things are more spaced apart.
Yeah.
That maybe the single, making it the single line and not a harmonized line, just makes it easier to recognize, easier to grasp, easier
Yeah.
to be like, okay, yeah, this is a very clear motif that I'm drawing here, which can be more muddled if you harmonize the whole thing.
True. But yeah, what I said in the beginning, like the strings totally sound different there.
Yeah.
As you said, they're all like a cluster in the upper register, which sounds a bit more dangerous and chaotic, which also kind of would fit the vibe of Tidus. But I feel like, I mean, the remake is just a bit more beautiful. This sounds a bit more dangerous and
It's more, yeah, it's more ominous.
ominous, that's a good word. And I mean, the rest is pretty similar.
Yeah, very much.
We go to... And I mean, why did they get rid of the 12 string? The 12 string is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love the 12 string as an instrument. But they have like the 12 string contrasting the other nylon string guitar on the right side.
Yeah, I'd say so. And also, like in the original, I think the remake doesn't really have that. That this feels like at least the sound of a 12th-string guitar, maybe even coupled with a cembalo.
Yeah, kinda. I think the 12 string sound back then just sounded like that.
Possible.
But the cembalo sounds really similar to that. That's right.
Has less strong, which also makes for me what part I like for no particular reason, but I somewhat like it more in the original one is that it's has a more very diminished but percussive element where it runs so steady and has this harder attack of the cembalo like sound.
In the original? Yeah, that's true. So, if we go back to the remake, that's the remake. That sounds way softer.
Yeah.
Especially because it's both nylon string guitars. And then we also have quite the difference here, because if we listen to that next part, really soft strings, and it's still the guitars that play the theme, which is quite different in the original, which is something that you actually pointed out, because I never realized that with the strings that come there, that they have quite the different movement in the upper strings.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically you could say that only the original one really has that kind of like almost a melodic movement, whereas like this, we're gonna hear it soon, this upwards moving thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes up there, and now even more.
Which I actually quite like.
I like it a lot. Faster movements
Yeah.
in the background, like a counter melody to the foreground one.
True.
Another counter melody going.
But it also sounds more cluttered and chaotic.
It's definitely denser.
Also kind of fits Tidus.
But yeah, I find it interesting that the original one has these somewhat strong motifs
True.
in the strings, and they're just cut for the remake, where it's
let's go
just
to the remake real quick.
basically only string, not necessarily pads, but just the chords.
Yep. And it's all guitar again,
Yeah.
with really soft strings in the background.
They only have one little movement in one voice, that's it, but there's no upward movement here.
It just went down.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The original one, it keeps on going up and up and up and up into registers where like usually violins don't even play anymore necessarily in the highest ones. I think Sibelius wrote one of the highest notes that I wrote in there as red. That's not on the instrument anymore, technically.
I mean, with harmonics or anything, it's something you can do it.
But yeah, here it stays fully on this very mellow, really just a string background, just forming the chords, no counter movements, nothing. It's just stays focused on the guitar.
I mean, I think this is another theme that I'm going to bring up from like every now and then, which I think this is... Okay, wait a second. We got this little thing that sounds a bit flat. Here.
Sure.
There is this one note in there,
Yeah,
just because it just came up. This is one thing that I wanted to discuss about the differences in these two soundtracks, because I think that the remade version might be played by real players. Again, quite of a similar thing as the first theme, the piano theme we talked about. It could be played by a virtual instrument as well, because they are advanced enough to have like flat notes in there. And by flat, I mean a note that's a bit low. It's sounding a bit lower than it's supposed to sound. It's the right note, but it sounds like it's not in tune, I'd say. And if you listen real close here where the green part starts, I think it should be right there. Yeah, the highest note. Yeah,
and even the one before that.
a little bit, yeah.
A little bit detuned.
Yeah.
Both of them are a little up tuned. Which I guess could very much... It sounds very real instrumenty to me, because this is like the classic, okay, this is just not fully in tune with the frets or something like that, or you just have to reach over and bend the string a little, so you just have these slightly untuned things. I also find it interesting that they really full-on stick to the guitar for the melody through the whole remake, where in the original you have the guitar, then you have the accordion, I think it's supposed to be accordion, and
I think so.
that part that we just listened, there it goes. And then the strings take over.
Yeah, here's
like the whole B part is fully in the strings.
Is it? All right.
Here's this da, 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 da. It's in the strings that was also in the guitar in the remake. Another melody also in the strings.
It's a totally different vibe. All right. And I mean, here you can hear the note in tune.
Yeah.
So kind of what we meant before. True. And that upright bass there, I really like that.
Yeah.
That's a cool movement. So, what I wanted to say before I interrupted myself was that to say which of these is better is quite hard for us to say, because I feel this is a decision that the sound team has to make, or like the producer, to see which of these themes fits the character better, because both of them kind of express a different side that could both be Tidus. I mean, we don't know much about him yet, so we could go into detail a bit later with this again, but I feel like if you just listen to these different versions, both of them portray a quite different mood.
Definitely. I mean, I agree very much with Harter, because especially the original one, it really apparently had the goal of, okay, we're gonna stay more in this very mellow feeling with having all guitar and all that, and the remake just says, okay, we're gonna open up more with the accordion, then we're gonna open up even more with the extreme...
Other way around.
Sorry, yes.
So, the remake stays with the guitar, and the original...
The original one has the same melody in different instruments, and they basically get sharper over time, I'd say, from like the guitar to the accordion to the very high pitched strings.
Yeah.
And just the whole B part basically feels way bigger, sharper in the original, and just by staying on the guitar and all that, just says very no, we're still chilling very hard in the remake.
That's true. I feel like that as well.
But the bass entrance is the same for both, right?
Here? You mean that bass entrance?
Yeah.
I feel... is it there? Nah,
No, they don't
it's a
have
guitar.
bass.
It's there, but it's a guitar. If you listen here, it's played by the guitar. So they don't have the upright bass at all.
Yeah.
Just guitar.
True, yeah, it's on the low sides. Those strings.
Alright. And I really like how, like, in the new version, everything is quite cleaned up more.
True, they also changed the melody at the end a bit.
Alright.
The two last notes are the same, but how they get there is different. Yes, this plays in between the two. The original just says the da 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 da. Fills it up.
Yeah.
There's just a little run in between, which I guess makes sense for going with the like sounding or being played by a real person. I guess
Yeah.
that's something a player would do.
Most likely.
Like this long pause in between just feels more natural to have a little bit of a progression towards the next one.
Especially since guitar is a, like, nylon string guitar is a really more percussive instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, you can of course have sustained note, but they are not as sustained as a violin, obviously.
Yeah. And like da 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 da, just stays on that note. Done.
That doesn't work on a nylon string guitar. That's true. And yeah, because they put everything onto guitars, everything sounds a bit more cleaner, but also less aggressive, which I think is quite good. Because if you listen to the strings, the difference there, this one sounds way stronger, I'd say, and way more, in a way, aggressive, I'd say. Just from the sound perspective.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
It's way more in your face and better.
yeah, the strings are way higher. They're way more centered in the mix. They're just very
Yep.
prominent.
Yes.
And here they're just like this background carpet, sound carpet in a way.
And one thing that I wanted to talk about in Tidus' theme, since Tidus and Yuna, Tida and Yuna, are supposed to be like opposites with the sun and the moon. Do you feel this feels like a theme that goes well with a sun connotation?
How do you mean exactly?
Like, Tidus is supposed to be the sun character.
Yes.
Do you feel this represents a sun character? In whatever way, shape, or form.
I can see it because mainly it very much goes together with the first picture I got in my head that I already talked about, the campfire thing. So I can easily see like this summer night campfire during sunset. This like that is even more in the remake. This very much has that feel for me. Where it's just like it's I don't know. It's a chill night that's a little sad.
Yeah, I think that's quite good. I mean, it kind of works with the visuals as well, because the first time, as we saw here, the first time this theme came up, it was during sundown.
Yeah.
So that works quite well, I think. I was trying to find if there's actually like a connection we can make with Tidus and the sun.
And I guess to a certain degree, I guess you could make that one more in the original one for me, because like how the strings are used to have this very it's
bright.
bright, shiny.
Yeah.
Like how they open up in the background even while the melody is still playing, and then they get their own spotlight. So yeah, this feels more grandiose.
Yeah, this
I'd
feels
say.
more sunny.
Yeah. But like more the bright kind of sun. This is like daylight, and the other version is like the sundown time.
True. Yeah, that's good.
In a way.
I know what you mean. Yeah, so as I said, I feel this is like a decision that the sound team would have to make to see which of these two themes more represents what they want to represent. And Well, it's hard to say. In the remake, apparently they changed their mind a bit.
Yeah.
So they might not have known exactly what they wanted to do as well. Alright, so let's move on. After like this first little scene, we saw what kind of star Tidus is. We have this little transition scene where this is underlined even more. So after we go through this scene, we have this little transition scene in front of the stadium. So here we have the Blitzball Stadium with the statues, the grandiose statues, and the big entrance. And there's so many people standing here, and they've all kind of been waiting to intercept Tidus here.
Make way, make way!
So that's Tidus right
Coming
there.
through, sorry.
You're trying to get through the masses, and it's like, dude, this is like a really advanced
gonna be
city.
late.
How the fuck is there no security there? I was like, this
Hey,
is
let's go.
negligent as fuck.
Yeah.
I really don't get that.
Especially if he's like the star player, apparently.
Yes. But now we get like the real star player vibes. Now we get the first big cutscene thing.
Yeah.
So let's play it out a bit. Heartbeat. Yes. That's a different track.
I just love how the track just comes in here. It's just very unexpected.
Yes.
This is such a change in soundscape. All of a sudden, now we're like hard riffs and all that. Rock and roll metal.
Oh yes.
Which, I mean, I get a lot because apparently they were going for a rockstar vibe for Tidus here.
Yes. I got quite a bit to say on this. I mean, yeah. Let's just go through the scene a bit. We saw him like in the beginning of the rockstar vibe, and now we have this ominous character right there with his red cloak, looking kind of creepy, dangerous. And he's basically like pointing at this big tsunami wave thingy that's coming up. So like, looks like he's summoning it or something.
True. They definitely make it.
And now we got to see what Blitzball actually looks like, which is kind of like an underwater rugby, handball, football thing. Quite aggressive, but looks fucking cool. Cheering fans. Tidus, the fucking cocky bastard. Now, even reality is kind of falling apart with stuff going upwards. People realizing that there's danger ahead, and this guy just walks calm, like it's a regular day. Everything's being moved upward. Gravity is reversed. The whole world is kind of falling apart, and they're just playing games, not caring at all, cheering in a big stadium, like underwater. Now Tidus with his special, really cool move, this backflip. And now he realizes that there's something, there's danger there. It's like, what? So yeah.
Everything's going up in flames.
Everything is, yeah.
Literally going up.
Going up, yeah. Going up in water. And we have this scene. Everything's moving up, being destroyed. So much for like the cool, chill rockstar vibe. And we see the Blitzball Stadium right there falling apart. So, alright, let's stop this right there. This was the whole scene anyways. So I think this is such a hype scene to introduce this new world. Because even like the first few, even the prelude was an interesting introduction into the futuristic vibe of Zanarkand.
Definitely.
And now we got something completely different again, with like this really rock star vibe, as you said before. So Tidus is the star player of this team, as we get to know throughout the game. And he really shows his abilities there, like when he pushes that other player out of the sphere pool, like this really cocky kind of thing. And then like his backflip thing where he's like completely in the zone, basically about to win the game, and then like everything in reality is falling apart. So they're like playing games, literally playing games while the whole world is falling apart.
I mean, also kind of like these little things, I don't know if they're intended. I guess a lot of them were just in there for like, this just looks really cool. But like the fact that physics are even breaking apart before everything breaks apart, because like
Yes.
Tidus is pushing himself out of water like he's jumping from a trampoline.
Yeah.
Somehow. It's just like in one super.
But
flies out of the
this
sphere.
seems like something he's done before.
I mean, definitely. This is not something
This
that's
works with
connected.
the scene.
Yeah, it works with the scene. It works with the whole. I don't know. Yeah, everything just feeling a little disconnected, not necessarily like. Yeah, we'll get there later why this is a very cool choice, but just yeah. Apparently, they did not care too much about whether things made sense here.
I think they particularly cared about things not making sense here. They particularly tried to portray it that way that it doesn't really make perfect sense. Especially, I really like how it's introduced with the water droplets going upward when this like red-coated guy steps into the water puddles that we get to know in a bit as well. And something it's like it sets a really completely different vibe for the whole game, which I think is really cool because I don't think something as rocky as that has ever been in a Final Fantasy game. I mean, there's like battle themes that are rock-ish, but this is like really in your face with the vocals, the harsh vocals as well. Like this really hardcore punk vibe together with like, I mean, there's been this misconception that this track was written by Rammstein. Which is spread quite wide, which kind of makes sense because it sounds like a riff that someone like Rammstein could kind of write.
Yeah, well, Rammstein-ish at least.
I mean, the whole song is a bit more complex than usual Rammstein stuff, but that riff.
Yeah, I can see that very much. Rammstein. I also find it interesting how I find it hard how much we can go into it. Maybe we have to do that. Maybe it makes more sense at a later point. I don't think the song itself comes back, but like the lyrics are so foreshadowy.
Are they? I never. Okay, then let's leave that. Let's leave that for another point.
Like a lot. Like we can definitely come back to that with like go now if you want it. Another world awaits you. Bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, let's just leave that.
Go into the sand and the dust and the sky and everything. It's just like most of this comes up at later points. So yeah, we can maybe just. I mean, if you take it as a little tidbit to try and while we go through the game, figure out what kind of things feel very much. If you know what's going to happen, feel very precedented and you're told about it in that song pretty directly. Somewhat, which of course, especially with the vocals being super distorted and everything happening on top of that. So like no one who's playing this game for the first time is gonna listen to the lyrics, even if like I don't think you even have really a chance like to make them out since they're that sort of.
I mean, I've been listening to metal for a few years, replaying this game, and still the only thing I could make is go now. If you wanted, another world awaits you. That's basically the only thing, and like some other things that I picked up here and there. But still, this is not something that you instantly know what's gonna happen. And something that I wanted to talk about here is the Rockstar vibe, as you said, is underlined here really nicely, and I feel this is like back then when it came out, like the 2000s, this was really like the wrestling kind of era as well. And I feel like this to me sounds a bit like, you know, the wrestler scene back then, they always had like one of these bigger alternative rock bands. They had a single of one of these bands as their entrance single. So stuff like 3 Days Grace, Sick Puppies, Hinder, stuff like that. They had some like active rock track that was their entrance into the stadium, which I feel this is kind of Tidus's wrestler entrance kind of thing. This is the vibe that I got here.
That makes sense. I can see that.
And one thing that kind of was weird to me is it feels kind of, I mean, the song is hype, but it feels kind of weak. There's not a lot of like bass frequencies in there. I feel it's a lot, like it's like 20% more silent than the other tracks, than the thing that before and after. And I think that's such a weird choice.
And yeah, maybe it was really done to not having it be too overbearing and stick out too much, because it's so different in and of itself already, and also there's like
sound effects.
Yeah, there's the sound effects and there's just a lot going on, so I can see them going for like, okay, we really want this different vibe, but we don't want it to fully take over the whole scene, because a lot's going to happen in the scene that's just on a visual level. Like, okay, you follow your newly red figure that you don't know, and weird things are happening, things are moving upwards, we have the Rockstar moments, and the lasers flying, and I don't know what. everything's going to hell in a basket, in a handbasket. But yeah, like, maybe that could be like a reason to not have it be too foregrounded. Then just going for, we don't just make it quieter, we somewhat fully tone down the mix in a way.
Yeah, that could be a reason. I still feel like it's missing that initial excitement that it should be giving.
Definitely.
It's such a hype track.
I absolutely see what you mean, and especially in that case, the Rammstein comparison really sticks out to me because, especially if you grew up with Rammstein or have been around a lot of Rammstein, like this kind of riffing, as I already said, is very reminiscent of them, but they would have the same thing with like a fat bass drum, a fat bass, and the guitars also sounding way broader and just fatter, thicker in the mix.
I mean,
this has a little bit of a, for how hard it tries to riff, it has a somewhat weird grungy garage band sound.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, it kind of has like, especially with the vocals, it has like a hardcore punk vibe.
Yeah.
And punk is not, I mean, punk is a completely different kind of thing. And the punk usually that sounds really thin and bad, especially old punk. Which is a point in and of itself because it was not supposed to.
Yeah, it was the whole DIY thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Take one microphone.
That is true. But yeah, that was quite weird to me. But I feel like how they combined the song with the visuals was really, really cool way.
Yeah.
Because like what I wrote down here is the guitar solo is peaking exactly when Tidus does his sphere shot, like the backflip shot. This is where like the first peak of the song is. Then this water monster thingy attacking the stadium, and then during the second part, during the second like tapping guitar solo thing, that's when everything breaks apart. So if we go back in the scene a little bit, let's see if I can catch the right moment. If you listen to like, here's the backflip scene again. This is where like the song goes to like a climax the first time. Oh no, wait, that's a bit later. I mean, that's also pretty cool because the B part of the song starts here after he throws that person out. Which
We also cut to a different scene while going to the B part of the song.
And the B part sounds way more dangerous. It's not like this hype in your face kind of thing. This is like, alright, kind of weird things happening. I also really like their style. Like this yellow with like the really futuristic. I really like that. And now we got this hype first guitar solo thing. And I think this is such a great moment for this to happen.
Yeah, true.
And now the fight. With the sirens going off here. And then right there when everything breaks. This is going into like the second guitar solo now.
Yeah, just have pictures of the destruction of the whole city. And where you were falling.
And this, let's just take a quick look at this again. Just like the stadium falling apart right there. I really like the visuals of this. I'll come back to that in a bit. But just take a look at this. This was the sphere, this was the stadium where the whole Blitzball thing happened. Just take a look at the visuals of this.
Yeah, I see what you
and
mean.
I'll just, I thought so. Just come back to this in a little bit. And yeah, I mean, the riff is so fucking cool, I just want to show it. One of these kind of typical alternative metal riffs. Do I have to pick here? Yes, it is. It's like with this. Especially like just the guitar sound. If you have a lot more heavy guitar sound, like this. And then we got this B part, which is actually really cool as well. With the, you can hit it. Going into a guitar solo part thingy there as well. But I think this is like such a typical alternative 2000 alternative metal riff, something that you could have. It just screams 2000s to me, because these kind of things have been the things I've been listening to so much back then. So especially like learning this riff again, it was just so much fun, especially at the beginning as well. If I hit it correctly. With this evil palm muting. But yeah, I guess enough of that. I just wanted to show that riff because it's so much fun and it's so reminiscent of like all the things I listened to when this game came out and even like years later. So it's just such a cool riff. All right. So anything else I forgot? No, I think that's basically it. I really like the bass part in the B section, which like is, let's go to Cubase real quick so we can hear it a bit better. Otherwise, there we go. Yep, this is what I mean. No. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. He has a little bit weird, almost little atonal, or at least maybe not atonal flute, but
like quite dissonant part there as well.
But still like this walking bass. That's just walking these weird scales. I would have to look at what these exactly are.
I tried to push a little bit more bass in to this. I did a quick mastering thing on there. Let's see if I did a good job. Okay, see what I mean? It's got so much more weight. I put a bit more low end in there. Everything sounds way more massive now.
True.
If I go back to the original. Yeah. I mean, it's of course it's extreme now. I wouldn't put out something like that, I guess. But it just sounds bigger.
For a short amount of time, tonality just dissolves here.
And it fits with like reality dissolving. It's also like the tonality dissolving. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, this was probably not the best way to show what I meant, but I just did a quick mastering thingy over that to show like that if you put more low end in, what that could do to a track. And I feel like, I mean, different times and everything sounded different. But yeah, I mean, if I'm complaining about something, I feel like I should try and show what I meant at the very least, so people can see if I'm talking shit or if that actually makes sense. So it's easier to form an opinion on what I just said. Once again, being a sucker for transitions, we got another really cool shift in mood after this scene. I really like this, because we got like this really rockstar vibey kind of thing with like the unsettling thing where tonality dissolves together with reality. And like after this rockstar then, if we move on to the next scene, we see like everything is, well,
Very beige.
it's not in like the best shape. The broken statues, water flowing down here, everything's kind of broken. So after like the really like rockstar-ish vibe, everything is basically fucked.
Yeah.
And now we have this really interesting track, which is the first introduction that is not a Nobu Uematsu track. And we meet this guy again,
What are you talking about?
Oren. We seem to know him.
Yeah.
We seem to know that weird guy who came over to us that seemed like really dangerous, walking into the danger, knowing things. And we go into this next scene where everybody's running away and we are running the other way. And then suddenly we got something I'm going to talk a few times in this game. The music is taken away. Everything freezes. And we get to see this weird purple hooded kid again. Everything is like in slow motion or frozen.
It begins.
And we got this ominous.
What? Don't cry.
So Tidus' reaction is really good there. What? Why? How? And back to the music again. really stressful, everybody running away. And I really, really enjoy this track.
What the? Ah,
Oh yes.
hey, wait!
And like, Orin is there, we apparently know him, and instead of comforting us or anything, it's just like, I've been waiting for you.
Hey, not
So we-
this way.
It's really good. We don't know if we trust him. We seem to know him, but we don't know if we trust him. And now, take a look at this. I said take a look at the Blitzball Stadium before. Take a look at this. This is the thing we saw before. This looks like the Blitzball Stadium.
We called it sin.
And now the name is revealed. That guy seems to know quite a bit about this thing that destroys our hometown for some reason. And we know him, we trust him, but he knows all these things that are happening. And I feel like the theme behind this really does a good job at basically like translating this feeling. Because it's like, I like how stressful the whole vibe is that it underlines, with like the percussion focus as well.
And everything's either in the back of the soundtrack, everything's either moving fast or it's moving upwards. Something like that. Everything is just pushing forward.
And now we got this sword to actually fight for ourselves as well.
Gift from Jet.
My old man?
Which we can barely hold now and are gonna use perfectly in the first fight.
I got the exact same note. I've been wondering this from the beginning when we played the game. It's like, I can't hold it. I don't know how to use it. All right, let's go right into this, and now I can hold. Of course. What else? And yeah, so
These ones don't matter. We cut through it.
we go. I'd say let's go over to Cubase again real quick, and so we can hear the whole theme a bit better. We just heard the remake version, so let's go with the remake again. We got this creepy chord pad in the background here already, and this one string on the left side, which was one of the things that I noted in the beginning. Also, the left and right percussion thing that I think you hear a bit better in the original, which is already a bit more centered, a bit more mono from the very get-go. And I think now the percussion, we also have like the left, right, yeah, exactly.
They're bouncing around. These muted claps. Those are.
Right, I didn't even notice those. They're there as well, true. And then also the ostinatos we talked about. And then another one on top of that.
Same figure repeating.
So this is full of these ostinatos we've been talking about. Here, another chord to kind of break the tonality of the whole thing. Which later turns into like woodwinds in a bit. So I think here it shifts over. Yep.
And more upper register.
And a bit more calmer, but a different instrumentation. And then back to a more break kind of part.
But in that case, I have to just add that here the chords really don't break the tonality. This is just very much a minor 7 chord built on the pedal that's underneath it.
Right. That's what we gotta do.
It's just a minor 7.
So you can tell me whenever I say something wrong.
Yeah, that one. Minor. That's the sound you hear that's in the background. And now it's even more upper structure.
Let's head over to the remake again. Yeah, it's the same thing. And the percussion is way more stressful here.
Yeah.
It adds and adds and adds on top of that. And here the pad is moving a bit more slowly. From like left to right side. And the rest is quite similar, so let's move on to the next part. This is a different thing.
stripping it down.
Yep. And we got this. Where is it? I think, yeah, it comes here. First of all, we have a percussion part that's not in the original.
True, right.
And now this part. This throws me off so much because during the time I played the original, I also played Fable quite a bit. And I managed to find this, basically this exact same thing in Fable, which is right here. So this is taken from, I don't know where, but from Fable. Fable soundtrack is completely different, but here we got basically this exact same riser thing.
Sure.
If we listen to this again, it's basically the exact. I mean, that's probably just a sample taken from somewhere, but this is basically the exact same thing, and this always kind of threw me off because when I played the remade version and first heard that, I was like, I know this from Fable. I know this from Fable. I don't know where, but I knew this was in Fable somewhere. So this was the kind of reverse. That was the kind of thing that, yeah, really threw me off a bit there. It feels like a good theme to rush into action, basically. It's not extremely like dissonant, not extremely dangerous. It's just like a theme that kind of gets you going, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, the brass thing, riser thingy, just distracted. It just took me out of the moment a bit, but yes. Also, another thing to note right there, if we go back to the video sequence, we are in battle. First battle starts, but we don't have a battle theme.
Not true.
We still have, yes. And I feel this is such an interesting choice to do in the beginning of the game. Because I don't think I've ever, like in an RPG that is structured like Final Fantasy X is, like a Final Fantasy game, I don't think I've ever seen a game not use a battle theme in the very beginning of the game. And I feel like this is such a good choice here.
Yeah.
Because this heightens the emotion of this scene so much more.
Yeah,
I really, really like that choice.
Definitely, it makes it seem more like what it wants to be. Like these fights. How do I say it? In a way, the fights you're having here are more canonical, in that they definitely are part of the story in how they play out, because the characters have to move past these sin spawns that are coming. Where like the fights that you have in the fields don't have any story implications. They're just these different encounters that are just based in the same surrounding, and that's it. But yeah, here may have using the same music to like have like continuous, especially since the music already has this forward moving feeling, and the whole scene by running along the walkway has the forward momentum going. So yeah, just keeping that going makes a lot of sense.
It does. I really like that. And also like, not even no battle theme, also no boss battle theme, because we just had the first boss battle right there. And also, just no boss battle theme. Same thing going on.
No.
And I really, really like that they did that here. Then moving on a bit here.
What are you laughing at, old man?
Yep, let's go back a bit here. This next scene.
What are you laughing at?
So we got a good look at this person up there again, which he calls old man. So basically, this is his father that we just saw on this.
Give me a break, man.
And now Oren, being enigmatic as he was from the beginning, he's like, let's get. Tidus is like, let's get away from here. Oren is like, no, we're expected. We're going to walk right straight into this, and like Tidus trusts him. And this is also such a cool scene. This is something that State of the Arc also brought to my attention. It's like, this scene brings Tidus and his father together by this building with his face on it falling towards Tidus. Which is kind of an interesting thing, because we are going to see the relationship between Tidus and his father develop a bit throughout the game. And like basically having the two of them coming closer together is, by something like this, is really cool. Also, such an interesting mixture of the structure right there. So let's stop this scene right there, because there is the next theme is coming up. this is also such a cool thing, because if we go back a bit, there is still all this water coming out of the buildings while the bridges are burning and the buildings are burning. So yeah, another thing that I stole from the State of the Art podcast, which is such a cool symbolism for transformation. We got water, we got fire, and later we got a few more things. We could take a look again at like the different versions. We did touch on this a bit, but I feel like the old one feels a bit more mysterious in a way. That's what I wrote down, because
I guess. Let's see that.
it doesn't sound as dangerous.
I mean, yeah, like in general for me, in that special case, the remake just does the thing better for me.
Yeah.
Just sounds like more, and that track can be more without losing anything you might have, because this is just, yeah, this is shit's going down.
Yep, basically.
Happening here.
I also feel like they did a good job with the remake here.
Yeah.
To make the remake way stronger, except for the writer. Let's not talk about this.
But yeah, it sounds more chaotic. It sounds more broader.
Yeah.
Just in general.
I really like the percussion sounds.
Yeah.
The really nice choice for the remake to go for this right there. Alright, so also we got, if we go here still, we still hear the music, and we got another moment of the music fading out, especially when Tidus jumps. Music cuts out.
Almost. Oh no, it's forget.
It's completely cut out, which is a good transition into the next theme, which is one of my favorite ones. It's another Nakano one. This is such a great scene. Let's just watch this scene for a bit, because we got Sin right behind there. And Oren basically unafraid standing there with this really dramatic, emotional music in the background. Everything fading upwards into this destruction. And he just talks to that Sin thingy and asks a question that doesn't really like fear anything. He's just there like,
This is it.
being enigmatic.
This is your story.
Which is a good line, because the name of the track is This Is Your Story. And he just pulls us up.
Begins here.
Everything is pulled up in there, and now another transformation thingy into this bright light. We are completely basically vanishing into this bright light, being engulfed in it, while for some reason we are being pulled up and everything, gravity's reversed, but Oren is just standing there. Maybe a bit of his coat is floating upwards, but he's just standing there pushing us upwards. And yeah, I don't think it's still like, I mean, we kind of trust him, but he just pushes us right into this thing. What is happening? Why is he like that? What's going on? And yeah, I feel like this is such a great track for several reasons.
Yeah.
Let's go to Cubase again, because there we can have a bit of a conversation about like the remake and the original again. So both of these versions feel really, really different to me, because the newer version has a bit more of an impact to me. What we just heard was a remake version. And if we go to the original, that sounds quite different.
That's true.
This one sounds way softer. We got this arpeggio in the back again, which is kind of orchestrated differently here in the original. And then this part is quite interesting to me, because let's go to the remake first. We got the piano quite up front,
Yeah.
with quite a bit of ambient stuff going on, which fits with the vibe that Nakano usually uses here with his compositions.
Those strings are at least not that prominent in the original.
Nope, the original is completely different here. And I really prefer the original here. The original feels really different here. And this is why I really do prefer the original. Let's go back a little bit before this green part. We got this. First of all, the string arpeggio in the back. And this. Such a creepy choir sound as well. We got a bit of this rising. Yes. And this is so impactful, I feel. I really miss that in the remake version. I don't know why they took it out. The remake just doesn't have it at all. We got... I mean, there's some, like, watery, blobby sounding synth in the back. But it just doesn't have the impact.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, the arpeggio is gone.
Yeah, the arpeggio is gone. And
so I really prefer the original here. So we have like... Also these parts, after this...
one of these underwater.
Yep, that's what I said with the underwater pads. But this part also, it feels weak. It feels more introverted. It feels more reflective, which might not be a bad choice. But it kind of takes away from the impact that this scene is supposed to have, to my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, especially with what's going on visually in the game at that point.
Yes.
I really think the broader, bigger soundscape fits more, because this is this super weird happening where you're getting basically pulled into a black hole in a way.
Yeah, it even does look like this event horizon thing being stretched. I mean, this also feels quite reflective, but... Okay, both of them sound good here. Bit different, so I might have been...
I love that final chord.
Yeah,
It's just so weird.
but I really like how they did it, because they didn't really do that in a remake as much.
True, it has less impact.
Because...
Way more bass.
And there we are again at one of his compositional techniques, because there is no bass here.
No.
But there is here. A little bit of sub bass is there, but not in the remake. Which makes this chord with the bass chord much stronger again. So although I like the beginning in the remake, I really like the old version better on this one, because I feel it just has so much more impact.
No. Yeah.
Especially also with this sucking in sound. Does the remake have that? No. Doesn't have that at all.
Strings swelling.
It's another thing where I really prefer the original. I mean, you have a bit more bass, but you don't have this.
Yeah.
So
Definitely
I
like
do prefer the original way more here. I mean, it's subtle again, and it would be like a decision of like the sound team which version they would prefer. But I do think like the way they orchestrated it with synths and everything is cooler in the original. And this was our hubris talking. So, today we got to meet our main character, Tidus, as well as his wondrous world of Zanarkand. we got to hear the first two Leitmotivs composed by Nobuo Uematsu to Zanarkand, as well as Tidus' theme, and we got to hear two compositions that were not done by Nobuo Uematsu, but by Junya Nakano.
Exactly.
First ones ever not done by Uematsu in a Final Fantasy game, I think.
We should think so. Also, in our next episode, we are going to wake up in some kind of desolate temple. We are not going to know where we are, but we're going to encounter a lot of atmospheric tracks, which were either composed by Uematsu or Nakano again. So, we will still be able to highlight their different approaches to composition within these tracks. Also, stay tuned for our next leitmotif.
So, thank you for joining us.
And see you in the next one. Bye!